My guests were taking us through the possible causes of why we are where we are now when it comes to the microfinance sector. One key thing that stood out for me was the education. We were not aware of what we are doing. But however, as time went on, things have been put in place, education has been given, training has been given, and the future of microfinance is going to be much more robust. Now I'm going to take from each of them what the nature of the incoming reform should be like and what solutions we should put in place to make sure that we don't come back to this problem. So I'll start with you, Roderick.
Okay.
The nature of the reform and what we should put in place to make sure that we don't come back to this area.
Great. Well, I think it's important for us to understand that the reforms are very important. We need to do it. And the other positive note is that if you compare other microfinance crises, like say in Morocco and then in India, I mean, once reforms came, actually the sector grew again. And so we're on the path. What I think we need to do beyond just paying or putting money to save depositors is to look at how we have structured the microfinance sector in Ghana. We should be able to structure it in such a way that institutions that feel would want to stay in Accra would pay a certain capital level. Institutions that actually want to stay in the interland will pay a certain capital. I mean, let me borrow simply from the Nigerian sector. If you want to stay national as a microfinance, your capital requirement is different. If you want to stay regional, your capital requirement, we can do that. And then we should also look at, I still believe we need a fund. I mean, an on-lending fund or a fund that microfinance institutions can actually fall on and actually extend on-lending loans to their institutions. Another critical point we need to be looking at is the apexes that we have in the microfinance sector. From my view and from a lot of work, I think we have too many apexes. And what happens is that when you have too much or too many apexes, they begin to form, everybody protects their turf.
So when you say apexes, you're referring to?
I'm talking about like GAMC and
okay. So the different associations.
The different associations. Yeah. We also need to streamline that so that we can have directives coming from one apex body actually going through the entire industry with the same information, with the same standard, and with the same objective. That one is also very important. Fine, I think we are doing a bit more with the capacity building.
Okay.
Capacity is critical.
Okay. Unfortunately,
for most people that are found in microfinance, or the concept was that once you are done banking, you can do microfinance. But the truth is that
it's different.
It's different.
Yeah.
Microfinance is more developmental than a debit and credit, activity.
Okay.
And so we also need to have capacity in that field who can actually install, implement, and direct microfinance in such a way that at least we can have two bottom objectives, which is our sustainability as well as our impact. Okay. Beyond that, we still would have to rest on our universal banks.
Yeah. Okay. Akofa, the nature of the incoming reform and what you think, in your estimation, we should lay on the ground as concrete reform so that we don't come back to a messy situation where people are always complaining about microfinance institutions.
Okay, I think Roderick has mentioned basically the very essential things that needed to be done.
Okay.
And on many occasions, we've been told that financial services institutions strive on 4 pillars. They said regulation, recourse mechanism, deposit protection, and lender of last resort. Now, I would say we have enough regulations. Anybody who wants to do this business now knows what to do. And then we have a recourse mechanism that came last year or so. Those acts were enacted last year. And the deposit insurance is coming this year. So the issue of fund is critical.
Okay. So both of you agree on that?
Which is, now, nobody thinks of where microfinance people raise money from for business. And we borrow from the banks with cash deposits. When you go for overdraft, you deposit cash. Now, how much do you get the cash? you are depositing, and then you are lending against that one. Then the customer takes it and now tells you that I am paying principal. That is critical. So the funding bit becomes very important. So if this reform, as has been said, 700 million, 950 million, those monies come. As a practitioner, I don't know how it's going to be like. But if it's coming to support the institutions, that will be perfect. Yeah. That will be the ideal thing. I think we need to clap for the government and praise them forever if they are able to do that, because for the very first time, there will be such a fund to help. I know our colleagues in Nigeria, they borrow at 2% per annum, and we borrow at 30 plus. It's now that interest rates are coming down little. So it's very important. But I also think that our services will need to be expanded. Now it's basically loans and deposits. Even mobile money, we do not have license to operate. And then other transfer services and insurance. Those are all microfinance services over the world. And so being limited to these two aspects, I think, will not help the industry. And then one thing that is critical after educating the practitioners, we should do a lot of training to Ghanaian populace for them to understand what it means to borrow from an institution. I mean, to deposit us. Because once people do not understand, their behavior towards the services become destructive. Because I said this many times on this program, because on this kind of programs, because one of the basic problems we have is that Ghanaians have bad borrowing practice. Once they borrow money, you know all the adages that talk about money. Payment is a problem. And then most of the lending institutions, to some of them too, they are not on the credit bureau. So it is difficult to even assess a Ghanaian and lend to that person.
Sorry to cut you. Do you guys have access to the credit reference bureau?
Yes, we have. Yeah, they do. But there are other institutions that lend, but they are not there. So if you want to analyze a typical Ghanaian, you have half information. Of course, the family and others will not give you information. So you have limited information. So if all these people are, compelled to use the credit bureau, it will it will help us a lot. And the last thing I want to say on the way forward is that the people will need to know that microfinance practitioners are not greedy people. They are not greedy, and then microfinance investors are not greedy. You see, it's our mentality towards these people prevent them from owning up and telling you how much they have been able to make from these institutions, because they think that once you're dealing with a microfinance institution, you are greedy. Of course, we are not greedy. And I would want Ghanaians to know that it is not greedy people who set up offices, employ people, pay them, pay utilities, and pay other things for the economy to be running.
That's a passionate appeal from Akofa. Roderick, what's yours?
2 points I want to say. Going forward, we must cut out what microfinance operations actually is. We must target what we have been set up to do. Going beyond your target would create future problems. That is one thing. And the other point is that we must have regulatory processes as well, and some incentives that will push the social aspect of microfinance. So when we are reporting, of course, regulation is hard, in terms of profitability and others. We should also report on the social aspect. Because once we do, we actually pick the social aspect, then institutions actually would be moving towards that direction. And when I say incentive, when we capture more of an institution that is doing more of social, then this fund that we are talking of, for instance, can be some of the criteria to assess those funds. And when we do that, we would be able to actually have the complete effect of microfinance that we should have. That I think is important that we do.
So we've learned a lot today, but I think at this latter part, what stood out is the fund, access to cheap funds. And if you've been following the interest rate discussion in Ghana, you see that yes, they are tapering downwards, but they are still high. And if they are still high in the universal banking sector, you can imagine how high they would be in sectors that don't have access to cheap funds. And that's where the problem comes in. I'll take one each. Final word. Something that will touch the hearts of those who have lost funds. People I spoke to during this week. I'll start with Akofa very briefly. Touch the hearts of those who have lost funds and put the image of microfinance in a better light in their minds.
Well, I can sympathize with people who have lost money. Making money is no joke, and to lose what you have made and made the effort to even save it with an institution, it's be very, disheartening. But I will say that the institutions that are licensed have every information on the directors and the owners on one side and people they have given the monies to. So it is not lost. I think what must be done is that people would need to bring these
people forward
to the notice of the regulator. I'm sure Bank of Ghana has created a lot of room for such people to come in and report, and then they will be sorted out. And also to add that, now, for the fact that there is going to be a cleanup does not mean that people are going to lose money.
True.
It is rather to make the system better, to strengthen the institutions, to provide support for them. So we should look forward to, and I pray that it will come early enough such that our business that are Istanbul will move forward.
Roderick?
Well, I want to say that, we all should remain calm because if you look at the support that is coming, actually it's targeting the client more than the institution. So, if you have your money well recorded in the microfinance institutions per what is being announced, it's actually directed towards such depositors. So people should remain calm. We should avoid actually rushing on the financial institutions, because when we do, actually it will create more problems. But as we speak, with this package, there shouldn't be any problem.
Thank you.
Therefore, population should